Hi, I'm Elizabeth Williams. I'm production designer for The Handmaid's Tale.
I'm Leslie Kavanagh, and I'm the costume designer for The Handmaid's Tale.
And we're going to go take a look behind the scenes. We followed through with the original design of the series in season 1 for everything that was set in Gilead. We did a lot of research of autocratic regimes, and there's always something very stark and very sterile about the architecture, or some very brutalist about the architecture in, places like Russia or North Korea or etc. So we were inspired by that. And shooting in Toronto and Hamilton and other places around Toronto, there are a lot of buildings from that era. And so most of them, of course, we adapted to our own purposes, but there was a base from which to work from.
The whole concept of The Handmaid's Tale in this world of Gilead is that it's sort of a dystopian future, or we play it sort of that it's a dystopian now. And in the show, throughout all of the seasons, we've never really denoted when it is. And we just try to steer clear of anything that's going to date the show. And through costuming, that would be one of the big things, is staying away from all the clear trends, staying very classic, not trying to give away any silhouettes that could be denoted that, oh, they shot that in, 2014 or 2018 or 2025, whatever the year is. So that's something we try to stay clear of through costuming.
We do have to, create our own world. Again, in keeping with the general tone of what first Margaret Atwood wrote, but also inspired by, books like 1984 or various other, literature, film, and just historic visuals, to expand the world. There's a general cultural knowledge that we have in the Western world about what it is to be in a authoritarian regime. There's a lot of, similar buildings that are similar to Boston. And as we know, Gilead is set in Boston. So the red brick, the more early 1900s, late 1800s buildings. And so there's a sense, that we're somewhere on the East Coast. And so we're able to adapt to the story.
What was exciting for me was that, because I wasn't going to be telling the same story from the same perspective and point of view that we had up until this point, because Gilead had gone on show in season 5 with Fred's funeral, and it was all planned. It was all, the handiwork of Miss Serena Joy Waterford to use that platform of Fred's funeral to get at June and Luke about their daughter Hannah. But in doing so, in the discussion point with the showrunners and the creators and the directors, okay, what does this mean? Where do we, take this visually? And my sort of thing is about, I like to bend the rules, but not break them, because of course I don't want to end up on the wall, as you would in Gilead. And so it's just pushing some boundaries. I was so excited for Serena's cape. I had a lace detail on there, which I don't know if people knew, but I was like, oh my world, for some lace. And things like that. And so again, the silhouettes for me were leaning more into the 30s and the 40s, but then also on the contemporary side, which was really, really fun. And this is the first time we really got to showcase June Osborne in a whole new world of freedom. We've seen flashbacks throughout the series of her, but never really delved into this is where she is in her journey right here, right now, and how do we do that? And so it was a really super fun time for me and Elizabeth Moss to really evolve the character of June, finally getting out of the handmaid's dress, or that of another disguise of Gilead. We've seen her as a Martha. We've seen her as all the things. And so it was really interesting and creatively rewarding and fun time to bring June's story alive through the visual elements of costumes for that part of the storyline. And then we got to carry that over to season 6.
I feel like we have certainly the creative and the technical ability to do pretty much anything. One of the challenging things is always to remind ourselves and to stay in keeping with, as Leslie said, some of the rules that we've set for ourselves, like, for example, certain sets are in Toronto. We try to stay in keeping with a certain aesthetic. In Gilead, Boston, we've been to Washington, we were in Alaska, we were in no man's land. And so it is difficult when you're in New Bethlehem over an entire season, let's say, or 2 or 3 seasons, to respect those rules and make sure that the audience understands immediately, visually, where we are.
Red was the very poignant, very powerful, strong color of power, yet oppression. It's amazing how they've done that. And that's obviously taken straight from the book and straight from all the descriptives that Margaret Atwood has in her literature. And it's the blood life, the family life, reproductive, all of these things. Black, we denote black with power. The color of the wives was something that I was really able to, I guess I would say, manipulate to a different point of view, because the colors had been much more dark and one shade and one palette throughout, even though people had their own individual dresses. There wasn't a lot of variations in the color. And historically, The Handmaid's Tale that shoots here in Toronto, Canada, they historically shot in the colder months of the year. And when I came into season 5 and then also through to season 6, we started in warm months, which gave me a lot of creative freedom to, I always joke and say that I established the spring-summer collection of Gilead. But we kind of did. We were bringing a lighter, brighter, we were trying that on purpose. Again, because the story was saying Gilead's trying to show that they're open, that they're welcoming. Come to Gilead, it's all great. And so we were trying to showcase that through the colors and brightening everything up and going into some lighter hues. And I continued with each lady. We had a lot of guest stars and reoccurring key cast that they all sort of had their own tone. And so it got to be a very balanced, game of Jenga for me when I'm doing all the fabrics and laying them all out and making sure that as a collective they look amazing and that they're all complementary, but also still pop as each character should. We have our lovely commanders, and their uniform, of course, is a black suit with a white shirt and a black tie, and they wear suspenders. And we try to do really classic cut suits. So nothing slim cut, nothing trendy. We're not doing fun, slim lapels. Same for me with the ties. I never do a super slim tie. Just try to make it something that fits into every time period, which has been the history of that suit. For me personally, coming into the show when I did, we're sort of divorced from the book at this point because the stories progressed so much. So I feel a little bit like I had more room to create the visual storytelling aspect of costuming than maybe some other people had. I did do one thing in season 5 that I started to do was I got away from the 1950s type silhouettes and I lean more into the 30s and 40s. I think it's still a really beautiful time period, even though I do love the 50s, but I think that the 30s and 40s is a really beautiful time period, wartime, and still when things were hard to get, so people are making do with what they have, which is a little bit like Gilead, but also very feminine silhouettes for the women. And I wanted to continue that because I think that the ladies of Gilead do believe that, and they try to stay very put together and just so and look elegant and elevated, but not overly that it's so flamboyant. We don't accessorize. There's no jewelry. I don't know if anyone's noticed, we don't do a lot of purses. We don't do belts. We don't do buttons. We don't do any of that sort of stuff. We just make do with the fabrics that we have. I was so excited when I got that script because I got that script early and I was like, what? Yes, please. My royal wedding is coming to life. And so I was so excited for Serena because she's a multifaceted character, of course. I was trying to figure out what is the message here? What are we trying to say? Serena's been through the ringer herself. And of course, there's all the people that love her and there's all the people that love to hate her. Either way, Serena's so the focal point of Gilead for us. And I think for me, I was trying to find the elements that tells the story of that she was once a lady of, she was in her mind a founding father of Gilead with her and Fred before everything happened. And then, of course, Gilead's formed and takes over, and all of a sudden as a woman, she no longer can speak and have her voice. And that was really hard for her because she's like, wait a second, I did all this heavy lifting here. And so I feel for me, my sort of interpretation of Serena and something that I spoke at length with Yvonne Strahovski, who plays her, was I always saw Serena always continually thinking that she is her own commander. She's always in charge in some way. And of course, in Gilead, how she created that illusion was in many different flavors throughout the seasons. And so when we see her getting married, she's already been a first lady, if you will, of Gilead. She's lost that. She's been denounced by Gilead. She was in Canada with her baby. Then that family tried the Wheeler family tried to take her baby. It's the love story. It's, it's not Romeo and Juliet, it's Juliet and Juliet between her and June, And so when we were doing the wedding, it's like I wanted it to be about her coming to this on her own terms, that she was walking into this of her own volition, because I do think that Serena really believes in the concept of Gilead and why it can work, but has seen over the course of time the errors of the ways that they've gone and how she can make it better. She really feels she's coming back and she's going to make it bigger and stronger. And so when the wedding came up, I really wanted her dress to denote that. And I went through several different design concepts that all had different symbolisms in them to mimic what I thought it was, and playing on doing some shoulder detailing, because all of our commanders have shoulder details at ceremonies. So I was like, I did this one design that had a bunch of, that. It was kind of like how she's wearing her own armor in one of them. And then I did a design that was super soft and flowy, and so different version of Serena than we've ever seen, because she's fallen in love again. It's a happy, joyful time, and she's softening and letting herself down. And then the design that we finally ended up on had a lot of personal input from me. It's sort of very symbolic of my father's in the military. And so it's got a little bit of an undertone of a military dress jacket for a ceremonial dinner that I always remember as a child seeing my dad in this outfit. It was so sharp. And then the other part of it too is it is like a commander again, in that it buttons up. It's a 2-part dress. We have for the ceremony at the church when she's walking down the aisle. It's a very stiff, it's sort of almost, I guess you could say, a little bit like the ringmaster of the circus, because she's always orchestrating everything, has a little bit of that undertone as well. And then we got to add some embellishments again that we never got to do before, which was really fun. And on the back of it, one of the things I love the most about the dress is the train is really long. That Princess Diana was my inspiration for having this big, massive train. It truly is. And on the back of the dress, I was like, what's the detail? I don't want it to be super plain. And after playing around with a bunch of different ideas, we cut out by hand a whole bunch of leaves and made some vines out of the same dress fabric. And I've put them all around the back of the dress in 3s, because it denotes the new tree of life between her, Commander Wharton, and of course, baby Noah. And so they're the leaves that represent the 3 of them starting on this new journey together. And then the one little detail that was really special to me that I hope the fans love is that her dress is actually a really icy blue. And I put her in that very purposely. She's been in no blue this whole time in the season, because she is choosing to step back into the role of wife. And that was the first time we got to see her in blue.
Well, they really do make the most exquisite dresses.
It was life-changing, I'd say, in terms of my personal growth, my abilities, I think, to lead a team that size. Creatively also, I think I've evolved, tenfold. It's just insane to have stayed on this series for such a long time. There are many times where I was wondering, is this the right thing to do? Should I be moving on in terms of my career? And then, really, though, we basically built almost everything in a sense, from I keep saying like trains, planes, and automobiles. It's like we did everything. And so I feel like creatively I've actually spread my wings almost more than if I had moved on from, obviously I don't know this for a fact, but if I look back and I think about other shows or films that I'm doing now, there is a repetition, right, in a sense, in our work. And I'd say that with The Handmaid's Tale, what was so enriching was that there was no repetition. We actually had dozens of sets every single episode for 8 years I was there.
What an incredible, incredible show to be a part of as a costume designer, specifically because it's so costume driven. And it's not always the case on shows, and where the costumes are really telling such a big part of the story that you get to have a part in every single story point is amazing. To have the opportunity to challenge yourself all the time, like what's the next look, and how do I do this again? For me, it's been so rewarding. It's been so amazing to be part of a show like this where you have the most incredible cast, the most incredible crew. Like I wouldn't be anywhere without my crew. My crew is fantastic. They made me look amazing day in and day out. Having these strong scripts where they pay attention to all the details that matter. And to be in this whole collective where you have a voice and everybody works so cohesively to come together for what we all want is putting a really great product out there. And to be really, for me, one thing that I felt was really important for season 6, the very final season, was to do right by the fans. This show has the most incredible fan base out there, and making sure that we were doing all the storylines justice to close them up for whatever that is for each character. They close in different ways for each character, and making sure that we did that with giving them the support of the visual aids that they needed to do that.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I'm so excited for fans to kind of see the behind the scenes process and everything that goes into all this work.
Well, listen, it's been such a joy. Thank you so much. Appreciated being here.
I thank you. Have a good day.